Here up on top of Gold Mountain, looking at one of the most Elsa-fied landscapes around. This is the site of the former ice dam of Lake Missoula, which is a huge glacial lake during the last ice age, which repeatedly emptied and flooded the scablands of eastern Washington with floodwaters that went as much as 70 miles an hour, and went up over 200-foot drainage divides and down the other side, carried boulders the sizes of houses and so on. So this is a place that was repeatedly plunged into eternal winter and then remelted with an ice dam up at the place where I'm pointing here, the horizon. That was at times as much as 2,000 feet tall. And this is a site I've chosen to talk a little bit about some Disney movies which have gold strongly featuring in the theme, as shown by the colors of the main female character's hair. 3 different shades. Elsa is very pale gold color. The Anna is strawberry blonde, or as she's described by Disney, looks kind of reddish. And Rapunzel is more of a yellowy golden blonde. These also all symbolize things having to do with the name of this mountain, Golden Mountain, which are royalty, wealth, immortality, power, and medium of exchange, and all these sorts of things. Now the question I've pondered, because someone asked and said they'd looked on the internet and couldn't find any hits for the search Tangled sucks, and yet there are all sorts of people who don't like Frozen. Why one and not the other? This is a thing to ponder because the 2 movies both have these golden heroines in common, and their plot structures are also very similar. The main reason I think why one might not like the other, it might not be a legitimate reason, is that Frozen is a film designed to produce torment in the viewer. It's not designed specifically to produce enjoyment. The original story that it's based on is The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, and that is about a supernatural trolling campaign. It's a demonic or devilish supernatural attempt to instill snow that works like a broken mirror and distorts everything that people look at, so that they'll always see the worst in each other and they'll begin fighting with each other. So this is what we call trolling today. It's making incendiary comments merely to instill chaos and make people who watch them fight with each other. That's what Frozen does. It repeatedly exposes the viewer to multiple contradictory, hate-inducing messages. And it has actual trolls in the movie who do the actual things that trolls do. They stir up trouble. They are brought a young girl who has made an attempt to kill her sister, and they instruct her parents on how to become complicit in the crime and cover it up. They may also be covering up Anna's potential powers, if Anna has them. If Anna has fire powers, a little bit like Rapunzel has sun powers, that might be symbolized in the scene where we talk about Elsa concealing her powers, holding her hand up in front of a source of light and heat, in this case the sun. But in the movie it's a fire. And we see Elsa with the glove on her hand, holding up, concealing her powers, being told to conceal them. But what is behind her hand is the source of energy. So she may not be just concealing her own powers, but also concealing Anna's powers, because Anna is always associated with fire. She uses fire to fight off the wolves and so on, as other fans have noted. Rapunzel's power also comes, of course, from the sun, as we stand here on Gold Mountain. And in order to keep other people from finding this power, she's locked up. I don't know if you can see it in the center of this picture, but she's locked up in a tower, which you see over halfway to the next rise. Now, Anna's also locked up in a tower to hide possibly her own powers, and certainly to hide her because Elsa's hiding her powers as well. So all 3 of them are locked up in a tower for most of their lives till they're 18. And the moment they get out, all 3 of them no sooner get out of one tower and get down to civilization, then they get themselves put into another tower. Rapunzel tries to become the recognized princess. She lives in a tower. Elsa leaves her tower and makes an ice castle, which is another tower, and goes and puts herself in that. And Anna breaks out of that tower and then goes to look for her sister in the Frozen Tower. In a sense, in all these movies of the women repeatedly doing the same things. Also, both Rapunzel and Anna get out of their towers by meeting these dreamy men who have secrets that they keep from them and who want power themselves. And they fall in love with them within 24 hours. Elsa notes this, but she's also guilty of much the same sort of thing because she hasn't allowed Anna to know who she is. So Elsa says, you're marrying somebody you don't know anything about, but then on the other hand, Anna doesn't really know much about Elsa either, particularly the fact that Elsa once tried to kill her and covered it all up. Now, Anna no sooner leaves the castle than she first meets another guy who's very much like Elsa, just as cold and ruthless and power-seeking as Elsa is, and uses the same methods of psychological manipulation that Elsa used. He snuffs out any source of light when he's around Anna. He shuts down the fire as he's revealing his plans to gain power, and he shuts her up alone. He isolates her in the room. And he douses the fire much like Elsa would use snow to put out, cut someone's source of heat off, or to douse a fire. So he creates precipitation symbolically, the same way Elsa could. And he also duplicates the near-death experience that Anna had when he goes after Elsa. He deflects a crossbow bolt that's shot up at Elsa, puts it aside, and then he releases a chandelier which accidentally, supposedly, could come and crush Elsa and knocks her out. So it's a duplication of the attack on Anna. Now, so these people repeatedly counter people who are emotionally familiar to them. They escape one and then they run into another one who's much the same. When Rapunzel tries to leave her tower, she falls in love with the guy who's within 24 hours, who's about the only one out there who's dangerous to her. She can charm people so well that she meets a whole room full of thugs when she goes down to civilization. Goes into a bar, which you'll find many of in this tourist town below, and meets a lot of disreputable, dangerous thugs, but she charms them all into pursuing their artistic dreams, something you'd also associate with the sun and creativity. She's an extremely creative and persuasive, sunny disposition, and she wins them all over except for the one that she chooses as her boyfriend. He is essentially a killer, and he says initially when he meets her that he has no intention of cutting her hair, but of course he eventually does, much like a Samson and Delilah theme. When that occurs, you begin to ask the question, what did Eugene or Flynn know, and when did he know it? When did he realize that Rapunzel was the lost princess? Rapunzel is famous in her kingdom. Everyone should know her as the lost princess, and yet when he first hears her name, Rapunzel, he just says Gesundheit. He passes it off as if it's of no consequence. This seems to me that Flynn must have known that she was the lost princess pretty much from the moment he first saw her, the moment she first stepped into the sunlight. Because that's the only time you see a reaction from him. He says, aha. And that's the only time he seems to react. The narrative device, or you begin the story with him panning around and talking about how all this came to be, makes it look like he acquired his knowledge sometime after the fact, but you don't know how long after. And that's kind of deceptive, because it doesn't show you when he learned that she was the lost princess and when he started concealing that from her, because he came to steal her crown when he came to her in the tower. Now, the same thing happens in some ways in Frozen. Hans conceals his true intentions, that he just wants Anna for power, and although he might love her in some senses, would not let that interfere with casting her aside at the first opportunity to gain more power. Eugene wants Rapunzel for the money that her crown will bring, and eventually for her royal position, so that he can live in a tower himself. Or as he said, we'll look for an island over here, a couple down in the lake here. On an island that I own, tanned and rested and alone, surrounded by enormous piles of money. So his dream is not really, strictly speaking, to be with Rapunzel, it's to be alone and rich. Now, Kristoff, the second guy that Anna meets and falls in love with within 24 hours after being betrayed by the first one, is much the same as Hans and Eugene in some ways, in that he knows something very important to the main female character from the beginning and never tells her. He was there when Anna's memory was wiped out by the trolls, and the attempted murder of Anna by her sister Elsa was covered up. So the comic version we see of this with Olaf, the snowman, is that he has this craving to see what summer's like, be out in summer, and of course it will destroy him if he's ever exposed to it. Now Anna looks to Elsa to solve all of her problems, when potentially she has power of warmth within her and could reverse the winter herself. But Kristoff is left saying somebody's got to tell him, referring to Olaf, but he's also the one who really ought to be telling Anna what's going on. So you have these same elements in both films, something tremendously valuable and powerful that drives the climate and our economic lives and our wealth and our health being withheld from everyone except for one or two people. And the people who actually use this strictly to live rather than using it to get rich or have power over others are portrayed as the villains. This is the Mother Gothel in the Rapunzel story. She does hoard the sun's power, which falls to earth, and which is surprisingly scarce, because if you get that from one drop left sunlight, why can't the sunlight do that for everybody? She keeps Rapunzel isolated because, as it turns out, Rapunzel does not have the best judgment when it comes to men. And she is betrayed ultimately by desire, by lust, as Elsa is too. She makes a giant lust tower, temple devoted to sexual symbolism, which doesn't actually produce any real fertility, doesn't allow anything to grow or make anything more productive. So we have these women doing the same things essentially in both movies. And in that reason, if you're going to judge these things by the effect they have on society and what they're training people to do, I think you have to view them as two sides of the same coin. So if you say that Frozen sucks for the reason that it's propaganda, you'd also have to condemn Tangled for the same thing. One of the especially sinister things I find about Tangled in particular is that the one woman who simply wants to live and has the other girl's best interests at heart in terms of helping her live is the one portrayed as the villain and the one who's killed, and she's also the parent. In recent Disney movies, the killing of the parents has become more and more explicit. Like the Lion King, the young Lion King was somewhat complicit in his father's death because he fell for all the traps and all the schemes that would allow his uncle to place his father in danger and eventually kill him. But in Frozen, it seems like the ability to plunge the land into eternal winter in the middle of summer, as it once did where that 2,000-foot ice dam was, is a means of killing people from a long distance, which powerful people have always longed for, the ability to control the weather. Now, Elsa has method. She can kill somebody from a distance, change the weather. Motive. She can ascend to her parents' position on the throne on her 18th, when she becomes 18, or a little bit later on, 21. But they die when she's 18. And opportunity. She can do this anytime she wants. And she's also had a past history of attacking someone else who got in the way of her on her path to the throne, which would be Anna. So that is potentially the most explicit and most cold-blooded killing of parents ever in any of the Disney movies. In the one in Frozen, and it's hinted at by what happens in Tangled, because also when the woman leaves her tower, Rapunzel leaves her tower, that leads to the death of her woman who has raised her and acted as her effective mother, her adoptive mother, for almost all her life. So this is the message that is the nastiest, I think, in the two films. It teaches kids that to get ahead in life, you should kill your parents. And it's part of a coming-of-age ritual, as Flynn essentially jokes about at one point. And this is being instilled to children at a very young age, and when they should be most protected from propaganda. So it's most important to be careful what young people are taught these days. So that's why I think that there are many parallels between Frozen and Tangled, and we have to view them as a unit in deciding how we look at them, how much gold we shell out for them, in valuing their contribution, or lack of thereof, to society.